But yeah, welcome. We're back again. And yeah, we had to do this for a round two because we tried it and it was hot outside. It was too much going on. The sun was beaming on the camera, beaming on the mics, just destroyed everything. So we're back again to do this all over again. And we're a little more polished this time. So welcome to another episode of The Village Storytelling podcast, where we highlight people in our community doing amazing things. And we're sitting here with an OG, a legend. We wouldn't be in this space if it wasn't for her and Libby planting the seed to create this thing we call Wordplay. Multimedia artist, independent journalist, creative, writer, educator. She's going to get into her story. Please give a warm welcome out there in your space for Miss Elissa Yancey. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brandon.
Yeah.
Awesome to be here.
Yes.
Honor to be here.
And we're more comfortable now. We in some
it's
chairs.
not, the sun's not blazing down.
Yeah.
Not sweating.
Yeah. And got your dog moving
The
around.
dog's not crying. I had a dog. He was crying.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was still fun. It was good that was our rough draft. You need that sometimes.
Exactly.
So
warm up. It was definitely a warm up.
And that was the first time we really got to sit down and we've talked before, but it was the first time to really get a feel, for who you were and
well, and you're just so great because you just have a flow.
I try. Let's start from the jump again. Let's get it going again.
Okay.
And just a little bit about how you got into this is a storytelling based organization. That was the first seed planted, and talk a little bit about your upbringing and how you got into storytelling and journalism and kind of where you come from and just share some of your ingredients on how you got started and your upbringing.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so story is kind of everything, right? Mm-hmm. So everything we learn, we know, everything we know is through a story. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Norwood, Ohio, which is completely surrounded by the city of Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And I am I would guess a second generation urban Appalachian. My mom was from southeastern Kentucky, so stories were always all around our house.
Yes.
And one of the things I didn't realize until I was really old was because I was studying journalism, doing journalism, and I'm like, oh my gosh, when I was 4 and 5 years old, my mom was using this reel-to-reel tape recorder, interviewing our neighbors. That's insane. And I'm like, why was this, she was a stay-at-home mom, but she was working all the time because she had 6 kids, and she was an Avon lady, so that was super cool. And but then she just would interview these people. And I was like, that must have been planted that seed way back, other people are really interesting.
Yeah.
Like this old spinster couple, nobody really cared about them except for my mom.
Yeah.
So she was always wanting to get their history recorded because they never married, never had kids, so it was going to be lost. So that was super cool. And then I loved writing. Went to college, so I'd always be a journalist, but then realized that one thing I wasn't learning in journalism school was how people learn. Right, because it's very narrow curriculum. So I went back to school to become a teacher and learn how the brain works, how we learn things. Turns out through story. Turns out it all comes back to story, right? And was doing that kind of work, working at UC. Had worked at Cincinnati Magazine, worked at UC, and was living in Northside. And my realtor at the time was Libby Hunter, who was having different experiences in the neighborhood too, and really was saying how important it was for young folks to have a space to express themselves. And I was like, well, just so happens that's my bag because I've taught everything from little kids to graduate school. So this idea to create a space that was welcoming and friendly and story focused and where people could leave all the baggage of the world outside but bring their best selves in to create together, to learn together, to grow together. And one of the really important elements was that we learn most when we are around people with a wide range of experiences. Because I learned that through travel. I was really, really fortunate. I got to take students on trips, and I watched how they learned so much better when they were dealing with people who made them uncomfortable sometimes at first because they were like, I'm not used to this space, but that was the best space to learn. So that was the beginning of Wordplay and all those kind of very north-sidey kind of things. Libby brought in a typewriter. It didn't work, but the kids didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know.
So they just stood in line, waited to try to be like, how do I change the font?
Absolutely.
What do I do? Where do I print this out? It's right there. So, you sort of understand the wonder of words and how cool that is. So that was also the wordplay.
Word. You know, I never really asked that question. Like, you know, what was it like, you know, when everybody was around at the council, like, all right, wordplay it is. Like, you know, what was that like? What was that?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, what can we call this thing? And then there was the pencil rocket, which was the coolest design, because
iconic,
it like takes that idea of like words being this magical thing. And when you play around with them, good things happen.
You know, you were in the classroom, you know, so there obviously was a transition. There was a shift. You know, I'm curious to know what that shift was like, and you know, what caused that shift, and you know, and kind of like what drives you, what keeps you wanting to tell stories, and you know, connect and do the things you're doing. You know?
Yeah. Wow, that's an awesome question, and I think there's always been a part in any of the like 10 lifetimes I've lived in different careers that's involved working in collaboration with people and creating through words. So I've always been able to survive somehow through writing, which is such a gift, like so much privilege, right? But the best places have always been when I was working in community settings. So a lot of what I was able to do as a teacher was sort of build new communities.
Of course.
And I would never have left a classroom, but I am also true to my Appalachian heritage roots. I'm kind of ornery and restless and disruptive, which often doesn't do well in very big organizational structures like universities or like big corporations. So I get a little antsy after periods of time go by, and I saw some opportunities that couldn't exist inside a traditional classroom, and really wanted to take that out to community. So that was why in 2017 I left the University of Cincinnati, started a consultancy, but really started building what the nonprofit is that I'm fortunate enough to be involved with now, called A Picture's Worth, because it was basically taking what I was doing in the classroom and putting it out into community.
So you were on the college level.
Yes.
Okay, so did you ever deal with younger kids?
Yeah,
too? Okay.
I taught high school. I taught junior high.
Oh wow. Okay, that's
let
an
me tell you,
acquired taste.
there are some saints in heaven who have been junior high teachers. It takes a special gift.
Oh yeah, for sure.
7th and 8th grade,
Yeah.
not my favorites.
Yeah,
little kids, like I love the little kids. And then when Wordplay started, we had wonderful opportunities to work with littles. But then, actually, when Wordplay started, I also got to go back to my roots as a high school teacher and work up at Aiken for a while, starting the Word Up program that then Desiree Hosley took over and made magnificent, right? I started off with this little thing. But I think the really cool thing about all of those experiences were, you go in thinking you're going to do one thing, but then you learn.
That's how it always happens.
Right?
Yeah.
You learn that really it's the other thing that's the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just have to really be able to listen. And I'm like, that's the other thing. Super curious, super ornery, super like want to build things, want to create things.
Yeah.
And I think all those things together make the path that, explain a little bit the weird path I've been on in my life.
Yeah.
But it's also just so, like, how amazing to get a chance to meet and work with so many different kinds of people. So yes, I did work in high school classrooms, mostly in Chicago.
Okay. Oh, really?
Before moving back here. Yeah, so I was in Chicago for a while. Loved that. Probably could have stayed there forever, but life circumstances, family, this, that, and the other, right? End up back here, end up at UC, thought I'd be there forever. Thought I'd do this forever. But now it's really clear that A Picture's Worth was meant to happen, and I'm just the person to sort of shepherd it from one stage to the next.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. What was that experience like? You know, I know there's a difference in culture just from Chicago, Cincinnati. What was the whole Chicago education experience like?
Love it. It's still my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the second city. It's my second city. I have tons of colleagues, friends, people I still connect with. I still, Zoom in every semester to certain classes. Always am talking to my friends up there. It's what I love about Chicago is Cincinnati is, I grew up here. I get, Midwestern or whatever. Chicago still has the Midwestern piece to it, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just bigger, and it has more of. I'm not going to say Cincinnati's vibrant. It's just a different vibrancy.
Oh, of course.
There.
That's like our New York in the Midwest.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time in New York when I was doing consulting work, and I was like, New York. I couldn't live in New York. Loved to
Yeah.
visit, couldn't live there. Could definitely,
Yeah.
and loved living in Chicago.
Yeah, that's awesome. So from being an educator, being in the space that you are in now with the Picture's Worth, and all the things that you're doing, you kind of got like a ethos of like just education, the education system in general. Like, what do you think about it? Where do you think it's going? What do you think? What would you like to implement? Even if you can't, what would you like to see more of? And what do you think is missing? Just because it's definitely a flawed system.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's made by humans. So, of course, there's issues, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's so funny you say that because when I went to get my education degree in Chicago, my goal was like, I'm going to create my own school. I'm going to build my own school district.
Okay.
I'm going to do it right.
Yeah.
We clearly have got it wrong. I'm going to change all the systems, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, holy moly, these systems are complicated, right?
Yeah.
But I think the idea was mostly to just spend a lot more time building community and not so much memorizing things and allowing for people to be young people to be creative and given some real responsibility and opportunities that they weren't being given. Really learning how people learn. You learn when you're laughing, you learn when you're happy, you learn when you're uncomfortable, you learn where people are pushing you into thinking things you never thought before.
Yeah.
And that to me is like such a beautiful process.
Yeah.
And I also learned that, I'm not the person who could design a full educational model. I can design a curriculum, I can design a methodology, but let me tell you what, it is a lot, and that's why I'm such a strong supporter of public schools, even though they're flawed, because that's the dream, right? And anything that takes away from what we can do to support public education, I just feel like makes me very sad, right?
I agree. Yeah.
And I remember when I was in college, one of my mentors, Laura Pulfer, who was editor of Cincinnati Magazine, she was my boss for a while. She used to be a columnist, and she wrote this column like, I will always vote for every school levy because people say, oh, throwing money at things won't solve it. It's like, if there's one thing I want to throw money at, it's kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't care.
If
Just
I had
that's
it,
fine.
that's where it's going.
That's right. Just that's okay. That's the one expense, like always. Yes. You may screw it up. We're all works in progress, but as long as you're trying and we can advise you or support you in some way, because let me tell you what, less money for education sure is not the answer. That's not the answer.
That's not the answer. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to know, what you think about just, Wordplay does it. We have like the teaching artist model, going to schools and work with kids. And, I know I'm not a teacher in the classroom, so I don't know what they experience, but I know that I've experienced there's always sometimes can be some conflict with the teacher in the classroom and the teaching artist that comes in, because sometimes the teaching artist is just the cool person. They're like, yeah, you come in, but then they get to leave.
Right.
And then, so when you think about the future, just like, this whole teaching artist model, collaborating with schools and teachers, what do you think, where do you see it's flawed and how it can be better? And, what do you just see the future of that, because it's growing, it's expanding. I think we need more of it. But I can understand how a teacher can be like, man, I'm trying to do that. I have to do this curriculum. This is my check. This is how I get paid. And got this guy or this lady coming in to do this and do that. And, so what do you think? Like, how can we collaborate with each other as creatives around the community to come in and help with our expertise? Because, we have something valuable to offer too. We may not have the credentials and all that, but, we have a lot to offer. So what are some ways you think we can connect with educators more to kind of build a better community in schools?
Yeah. It's so interesting because as you're talking, the beauty of the village. Because it literally takes that village. The classroom teacher can't do it all. It should never be alone. I mean, one of the scariest, not like, oh, I'm afraid for my personal safety, but just like, you don't want to be the person that's fully accountable for these kids' minds and growth and development, right? So I think the idea, the more collaboration that can happen, so teaching artists knowing what the teacher's goals and expectations are for those kids, then the teaching artists are so creative, they can tap into that.
Yeah, they can.
Knowing what the kids are responsible to do, then the teaching artist becomes like not necessarily the coach, but like a support system for the teacher as well. And I think, you know, if I were fortunate enough to have a teaching artist coming into my classroom, which I never had, I would be like, I want to learn everything you're telling them. I want to be there. I want to be a part of it. How can I help? How can I support? How can we be a team? Not to take away the shine of the artist, but just to also model for those students what collaboration looks like, right?
Yeah.
Like how
that's
we
important.
are in. How do we talk to each other? How do we act around each other? How do we like? Did the teacher just check out and be like, I got a free period? Thank God I'm out of here, right? Which I get. I mean, maybe I gotta get a snack. I haven't had a snack all day. Maybe I gotta go to the bathroom.
Right.
Oh my
exactly.
gosh, when do I go to the bathroom?
Yeah,
I'm
that's the thing.
teacher.
That's the thing
It
that
is
happens.
a real thing. Been there, done that.
Oh yeah, been there.
And the seventh graders are relentless. They do
Oh,
not
they
want to
don't
let
care.
you.
Yeah.
They never let up.
Yeah, they don't.
No. Well, some shade to seventh graders. It's not their fault.
Yeah,
it's
right.
just
I get it.
human development.
Oh, of course.
And that's why the St. Lee middle school teachers. But I think there's such opportunity in seeing that relationship be a partnership as opposed to special guest star, come in, come out. No, everything that you're doing is reinforcing this amazing idea of how we learn. Oh, we learn through art. That's cool. We learn through reading this book. That's cool. We learn through studying this stuff, doing this experiment, doing this exercise, whatever it is, right? But it's all kind of different ways to get to learning. So to me, that's a beautiful model because teachers need a little bit of a breather, but also need their own creativity sparked.
Absolutely.
Because let me tell you, the demands on teachers,
I know
the
it's insane.
testing, the curriculum, the choices that have been taken away from them. What I loved about being a classroom teacher is being able to be creative.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a little jealousy, like you get to come and be creative. I don't get to be creative anymore.
Exactly.
So I would posit that the teaching artist could be like, hey, I know you're creative. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
Teachers have to know how to do everything with nothing.
Exactly.
So like let's figure this out together and not just have like, here's the thing I do every place I do it. I do this thing. It works every time. It's awesome, which is great. But at the same time, how can I tweak it to work for this group and help you help them?
Yeah.
The students are always the center.
Yeah, right.
The students are always the center. But when you're a teacher in that classroom, in those trenches, that's what's so easy to get to lose sight of. Just because life.
Yeah.
And it's tiring, and you
is.
got to do all the things,
Yeah,
and you got to, and you're responsible for everything.
Yeah.
We put so much.
Oh, I agree.
Onto schools.
Oh, I agree.
And I don't know that that's bad or good. It just is.
Yeah.
And we just have to. But what we don't do is not acknowledge it and provide the supports needed to actually be successful.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned, about teachers being tired and exhausted and carrying so much. There's been so many articles that come out about teachers experiencing burnout and they're tired, and there's been shorter school weeks in some places, and there are shortages. You know what I mean? There's always, we need more teachers to the point where they're doing all these different programs to try to get more teachers in there. What do you think are some of the solutions, or do you see any solutions for teacher burnout, and how can we make that better? What do you think about that?
I mean, I think exactly having different pathways into teaching, bringing people who maybe didn't see themselves as traditional teachers in to support the teachers who are already there. You got to have standards, absolutely, but at the same time, you got to be creative. You got to reward creativity. I mean, think about and I think teachers make decent money now, but it used to be they made horrible money. It's like, okay, and then people have this myth like, oh, you get all summer off, you're just relaxing. Right. Okay, no, like, by the way, no, and it's a job that you don't leave ever. Like, you go home at night.
Take it home.
And then you're working. I remember when I was teaching middle school and high school, I was working, 14-hour days. And that was just what you did. And it wasn't like I was like, oh, well, it's so bad. It's like, no, I just got to be there for them. And I got to provide what they need. So I think, to me, it's how can we invest more resources in smart ways? And you know how you do that? You listen to the teachers.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, who's surveying? I mean, I'm sure there are people who are surveying them to say, what would make this better? It's not just more money. How is that 4-day school week helpful? Because it seems like it kind of is.
Yeah, I
You
can
know,
see North
so
College Hill's
far.
doing it. It's like you get like a Monday off, and then you go like Tuesday through Friday. I mean,
And
yeah.
it's amazing. It gives you a little more of a breath.
Yes.
And the students can still, I mean, and also like being willing to try different things. My sons went to Montessori school
Okay.
for elementary school. There's more than one way to learn.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's a way to sort of embrace the diversity of learning styles and also just keep valuing, instead of just saying, oh, education is important, actually value the people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
Because they don't get a lot of value.
Yeah, they don't.
I remember when I was in high school, there was a talent show. The teachers did a talent show.
Oh, really? Okay.
And one of the skits, it was a comedy skit. That was really bad. But they were like, those who can't, it was a play on that old whatever trope. Those who can't do, teach. And those who can't teach gym. The teachers were saying that to each other. The gym teacher was up there and they were doing this thing.
Yeah.
And they were sort of mocking this idea.
Yeah.
But that has been a long-standing,
Yeah.
and I could point easily to the fact that it's a gendered profession, right?
Yeah.
So if women are the predominant
It's true.
people doing the work, then
true.
it's devalued just like
Yeah.
pretty much all women's work
Yeah.
is devalued.
Yeah. Oh,
So
man.
it becomes like that constant. And again, then I would go back to, hey, that sounds like a narrative change opportunity.
Yeah.
How do we start to change the narrative about who our teachers are, why going to school is important and fun and amazing and this great opportunity as opposed to a struggle?
Yeah, I agree with that on so many levels. Yeah, yeah, it definitely needs to be more of a pocket where it can even down to like, I disagree with the desk. Like even just let's just change the whole design of a
Yeah.
classroom. Like
Yeah.
just let's more bean bags, more circles and more discussions, and but I don't know the range the teachers have, but and then on the other end, like you talk about gender, oh man, I mean, let alone a black male teacher, but if I just had a male teacher, we lost it. We like, oh, we got Mr. Anderson this year, and just the fact that we had a male teacher, I mean, that was major for us, So yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective on that, because that's always something I'm wondering about. A lot of people are wondering about. There's some gaps that need to be filled. I don't know how that will happen. How does such a thing happen? Like, how can you change some things like that? Like, you've been in the education system and you being around certain people. How do you have those conversations? Do you go? Is that a superintendent thing? Is that how does one bring the collective together? The teachers, the teaching artists, the superintendent. How do you get us in the room, man? How does something like that happen? Like, what are your ideas?
The idea is, how do you basically create a new system, right?
Yeah.
Because we do so much work to fix broken systems, and sometimes you're just ready to be like, okay, we just need a new system. Like, do we have time, space, support, funding, all of that could be helpful? I'll tell you one thing that's not helpful: dissolving the Department of Education. Like, seriously, there's so much that we take for granted and we know and are frustrated by in our current systems. And then you think about how far they've come, right? And how many attacks they have withstood. Because there is a real contingent that does not believe that public education should be a thing. So I think you have to kind of have that conversation first. Because imagine if we put all the resources that are going to all these different kinds of schools to like the system that actually worked for kids. What? Imagine, right? But you got to get people who are thinking really differently before you can even start those conversations. So that's actually, and I'm not just self-serving, but it points to where and how my thinking has evolved, is that to truly change systems, we have to first change how we talk about them. Right? Because if the stories we're telling about them are always like, oh, this is failing, this is failing, this is failing, this is failing, then how do we identify the system, a failing system? That's how our brains work, right? That's how we learn, and what we say, the stories we tell, the questions we ask, it's all consequential and builds into these narratives, right? So then if you start asking different questions and pushing in different ways and offer up space for new creations and new ways of thinking, or say, what if we did this? What would be the best thing for the kids? How about we listen to some people who study child psychology, child development, but also kids. But also, like, how do you get the kids' voices in there early? Because we also perpetually underestimate and think with age comes wisdom, and that is not a given.
Yes, yeah,
so I feel like that piece of those kinds of conversations need to precede really thinking, like, what could public education look like? That's the question I like versus what's wrong. Right? What could we build together? That is a beautiful question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we're not having those discussions. That's the disconnect, you know. So,
because if you have those discussions, it really threatens people who have power now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
100%.
why that disruptive force, that ornery force, I think is part of, you know, we're always like, oh, I'm just this, I can't do this. Well, every one of us has a locus of control. Every one of us has what can we influence today, right now, in my life. I woke up, what do I have influence over? And so we all have some, and if we're all sort of thinking in that different way and start reframing the questions that we're asking and who we're talking to, then you start to see some movement. That's what I think movements happen.
Yeah.
Because that's what you need. You need a movement. It's not a policy. It's not a law.
Right.
It's people believing in a thing, working together to build the thing, and then saying, look how this thing works.
Yeah.
Look at all this amazing stuff.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. That is so potent. Yes. Got to take that in, and that truly, what you just painted, that is a picture's worth. That's what that is. Thank you for sharing that, and you know, that's a good segue into what you're doing now. You know, you're still, in my opinion, you're still a part of this whole ecosystem of education and journalism and stories, and share a little bit about A Picture's Worth, how that came about, the origins, a little bit about that, and where that's headed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for opening that space. I think it really follows along with what we were just talking about, right? So having worked in journalism, taught in journalism, sort of taught the traditional journalism curriculum, and then being a human and watching the impact of media on our communities, the disconnect was real. Like, how am I a part of this system that I want to disrupt? Because it's clearly doing harm. And we have this, you know, code of ethics in journalism that's like, basically like the doctors, first do no harm. Well, we're doing harm all over the place, but absolutely. No one really wants to say, like, well, where do we need to disrupt? So everybody's trying to do these disruptive things, right? But the people who know what's wrong are people in the community, and guess who's not at those tables? People in the community. So it's like, wait a minute, this is so, like, let's use some common sense. But people really get caught up in their expertise bubbles. Oh, I'm a journalist, you can't ask me, I can't talk to you. I'm a teacher, I can't talk to an artist. And that's all made up, right? That's all made up stuff because of how our education system is siloed, right? Because silos keep us apart. Right? Absolutely. So what A Picture's Worth does is sort of breaks through all the silos, and we say, you know, you don't have to be a college student to learn how the mind works and how stories work on our mind. In fact, we should all know that. We should all understand that the stories we're sharing have consequences, and that we can say we're objective this or objective that, but everything we see, know, whatever, is going through our own lenses.
It's a fact.
And that changes everything. And again, not good or bad, just is. So understanding truth is the first step, right? That's the reality. The reality is we're human, we're flawed, we're going to mistake things, we're going to screw up, sun's going to burn down on our phones.
Right.
Great dog's going to start crying. Everything's going to go wrong when you least expect it. Okay, that's fine. But there's this, I don't know, this sort of like sense of pride or whatever. We can't admit that. We can't just go back and go like, so anyway, so what A Picture's Worth does is say, we learn most, and this came through years of doing work in community and gathering community stories, is like they're the experts. Why are we acting like we know the right questions to ask? Because let me tell you, the questions we ask are often horrible. Like, you know, what's wrong? What's wrong here? Again, just like that, what's broken? Not like, what are you trying to build here? What was the best day in your life like? What do you hope and dream for your family? All those are equally valid questions, but we don't take the time to ask them. So when you go to community though and you say, hey, how have you been, you know, how do you see yourself? Okay, then you can compare that. And or actually what neighbors will do is they'll say like, well, the media doesn't talk about that. And I'm like, exactly. Shouldn't they though? Shouldn't you be in charge of how your neighborhood is portrayed to the world? And they should. They should. So it's a power shift and a power dynamic. So we work directly with community members, and we don't come in and parachute out. We say, here's somebody you already trust. Let's work through them. We all can work together. We're going to give you some skills, some tools. You're going to teach us. We're going to teach you. We're going to learn from each other. You're going to do this amazing interviewing and story collection work. We're going to help you put it in places where other people can see it and learn from it too. And then take those skills and do whatever you want with it. Do something else creative and awesome that we would never dream of doing.
That's awesome.
And then that starts to build a different community library. Right? And people start thinking, oh, that community isn't just that. It's all these different things. It's like, how do we talk about nuance? How do we talk about complexity? Those are the things that are real, and we all know it.
Absolutely.
But we don't make space for that in our traditional structures because, again, well, part of it is our brains are very binary, right? And we have to sift through a lot of information, so we have to think good, bad, boom, 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 boom. But the world lives in a much bigger place than that. And we don't, and when we are intentional about saying, we get fight, flight, fear, we get it. We're mammals after all. But we can then move beyond that and say, okay, I did that because my instinct was to run away from that person because they made me feel a little uncomfortable. My instinct was to ask the wrong question because that's what I've heard other people ask. Right? And that's like, so we've got to disrupt it. And that's what we try to do is disrupt it at that level and then show people who may never go to the West End or may never go to East Westwood or may never go to Roselawn. Say, oh, that guy, that's like my grandpa. Or that's like the guy I work with. I'm not scared of that guy. Of course. Or, oh my gosh, I never knew that team won the state championship. How cool is all that? I never knew this person started this school in Roselawn. Oh my gosh, this is like such cool stuff that I don't have the occasion to hear otherwise.
Right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Thank you for painting that picture for us and sharing your wisdom. I'm definitely going to go back and watch this and take some of that out, you know. And thank you for, you know, your contribution, you know, to community in that way. And I know as a person that shows up, you know, and is consistently showing up, it could be a lot, you know. And so as a healer, as an educator, and as a person that's trying to create these spaces, how are you showing up for you and these days? And, you know, how do you rest? What are some things that you like to do outside of your work to kind of just, you know, pour into you? And how do you do that? You know, and what are some passion things? Or
Ooh, that's a great question too. Well, one of the things that I learned through working with folks at A Picture's Worth is it's important to be. We have what's called bi-monthly community of care sessions, right? For all the people who are gathering stories, because, you know, carrying other people's stories, carrying your own stories, it's a lot, right? And everything can be, even if you're talking about hopes, dreams, and aspirations, you're taking on another person's stuff. So one of the things that luckily one of our amazing volunteers brings in experts. So we started the year off with Desiree coming in and guiding us through vision boarding. It's just doing something creative, artistic, something to get you out of that loop in your head. And then we had a session last month with social workers. Brilliant. Oh my gosh.
Oh wow,
so
that's
brilliant.
dope. That's dope.
And they were like, talked about even things like how you're breathing. How do you breathe? Somatic breathing, some ways that your body is carrying things and how you can let those things go. So since that session, I've been like doing my 4-7-8 breathing. I've been like, what else am I doing? And then the funny thing was, one of the things that I do obsessively is puzzles.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I have and because I'm a little anal, well, a lot, I have a certain order that I do all my puzzles every day.
Okay.
And it's probably and then I kept adding, now I can't add anymore because it's like 30 solid minutes.
Do you frame them?
Right, like all of them. No, they're all on the phone. I'm just right. I go all through the puzzles, and so they're word puzzles, and then they're jigsaw puzzles.
Okay, nice.
But what I learned through that session was that puzzling is a way for your brain to decompress. And I was like, oh, so I've been actually doing that, thinking I was like just being a zombie, but really it was a pathway to decompression. And then one of the social workers says, now do that and listen to bilateral music at the same time. Because when you put the earbuds in, you have the music. I was like, dang, that's some powerful stuff, right?
It is.
So there's that piece of just sort of setting aside. And then I think just in terms of what I love to do, I've always loved to dance. Ask anyone. So I go to an exercise class. It's just crazy.
Oh, nice.
Crazy. I mean, I embarrass everyone all the time.
Nice. That's how you stay young and youthful and keep your spirits out. Yeah.
It's just like you gotta have fun and you gotta laugh and just let. And I have so many amazing friends and friend communities that have supported me through a lot of really crappy stuff. Because I think that's also how you get to a place where you want to help other people. It's often because you've been through some things and you're like, oh, I bet nobody would imagine I was that person that was dealing with that at that time.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And so those people, the ride or dies, that's the other thing. Like they hold me up and hold me down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your contribution to our community and everything that you're doing. We appreciate your time and you redoing this again. Thank you for all the wisdom that you shared. And yes, that's another episode of The Village. Please check us out, wordplaycincy.com, Instagram. That's all. We're here. We're done.